The Florida Panthers go into Toronto and defeat the Toronto Maple Leafs and take a 2-0 series lead. Heading back to Sunrise, we're going to discuss the goaltending. We're going to discuss the 3 stars of the game, and we are going to prepare for this series to shift back to South Florida.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, May 5th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. You can also follow the page on Instagram as well at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come here every day to get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So the Florida Panthers, they fall behind early in the first period, 2 goals in 2 minutes and 50 seconds for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But man, these resilient Panthers getting a goal at towards the end of the first period, and then 2 quick ones in the second period, and then the Florida Panthers don't back down from there. This is the first win in the postseason where they gave up the first goal and they ended up winning the hockey game, first time in this postseason specifically. But it is Friday, which means it is a Fairbanks Friday edition, a live edition of Fairbanks Friday on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And we are celebrating a win, a 2-0 series lead for the Florida Panthers. Nick, welcome back to the show on another Fairbanks Friday. Oh, wait, hold on. Your mic's muted. Hold on. There you go.
I don't know what to say right now. The fact that I was not worried after Toronto came out with the 2-0 lead and got all their power plays. And by the way, I wanna put up a 2 for Paul Maurice here because that's how much we got. This team doesn't care if they're down or what you're throwing at them. They're going to make you look silly, and they're going to make you pay for it. I don't think I've ever seen this out of a Panthers team, ever. So, to say the least, I'm very happy with the 2-0 lead. If you would have asked me before the series started, if it would have started like this, I wanted a split. 2-0, love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just when it comes to that 2-0 lead for the Maple Leafs, I mean, it was that 5:10 of the first period that they got that 2-0 lead, and Panthers going on the Maple Leafs going on the power play, and Bobrovsky being a little shaky, not necessarily with being in his crease, but stick handling as well. Had a fumble the puck right behind the net and almost gave up an opportunity on the right wing circle to Mark Giordano. But ever since that moment, Bobrovsky was like locked into this game. And I mean, John Tavares creating opportunities once again, William Nylander again, Austin Matthews. But also there was a PK after where Alexander Barkov had great breakups, where there's one where they questioned whether his stick was broken, and then another one where he reaches out to get the puck out of the zone as well. And these two teams were also trading hits back and forth. I mean, the final hit tally for this game was 37-35 in favor of Florida. Sam Bennett had 10 hits on the night too. So just an incredible game, a very physical game for the Panthers, and very resilient that this team just continues to be in this postseason. 5-1 on the road, Nick.
I want to start every playoff series on the road. And the good thing about actually coming in the last playoff spot is that you'll probably never have home ice advantage. So, and I believe the 8th seed over in the West got eliminated. So Panthers don't have to worry about that in case they do end up moving on. But hats off to the Panthers for sticking with it. Not only do they not shy away from their game plan, I put out a tweet. I can't remember who it was, but one of the TSN guys asked, what do you think Paul Maurice said between the periods? And I'm like, just play your game. I mean, it was already starting to trend that way, and the fact that they got a goal in the first period really kind of cemented that belief. And what can you say about Sam Bennett? You know,
Hmm.
if you ask any Toronto fan right now, I'm pretty sure 10 out of his 10 hits were all dirty. He didn't shy away after even being called for 2 penalties tonight, and even the one in game 1. I don't understand half the calls that are being made because right now, again, we'll repeat this, it's 8-2. But I just don't understand where the refs are coming from with some of these penalties. I mean, I know,
There's
the
one that
first,
Verhage got hooked, and that
yes,
wasn't
no,
called.
and I was screaming about that one because clearly, like, anybody who was watching could see it, and they just didn't call it. And then you come back down the other way, and yeah, Bennett, cross checks Bunning in the head, which is stupid, but
Hmm.
it happens. Um, but the fact that he didn't change his game because of that, and that the rest of the team bailed him out. I mean, Florida is sticking with the game plan. They really believe, and I don't know if any other team right now believes. I mean, outside of the Seattle Kraken right now, I mean, what they did in their game shows that they have a mojo as well. So, hats off to both teams, but I think a lot of teams have really taken the Panthers not seriously, and it's costing them.
Yeah, and now for the Panthers, I mean, listening to a whole bunch of other podcasts around the NHL, like national shows, the Panthers kind of feel like the darling of the NHL, like a Cinderella like kind of story as well. And also, you mentioned the fact that the Panthers got a goal going into the first intermission, and how important that was for the Panthers to get that goal. Etu Luostarinen laying a big hit on Liljegren, and then Sam Reinhart getting a quick backhand pass to Anton Lundell, your boy
Mm,
Anton
mm,
Lundell. So
mm,
you love it, don't you?
mm. I honestly think that was the most perfect setup for a goal. Like for the Maurice, style play. One guy goes in, lays a hit. The other guy goes in to take the puck away or receives it, and Lundell's just right there for an easy goal. Like that is like a French chef couldn't put it any better than that.
Yeah, and
Woo!
Lundell's game just has come so much alive in this postseason, and the fact that we talked about Lundell struggling on that top line throughout the regular season when he was with Barkov during that little bit of time, and then having to fill in for Sam Bennett, and even though he himself hasn't exploded, I mean. Just the fact that, of course, when it comes to the time of year that it is with the playoffs, and just you got to give your hat out to Anton Lundell as well. And then the Panthers, I mean, scoring 47 seconds apart in the third period.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't necessarily think the game was over there. I mean, there was
No.
still 39 minutes of hockey left.
Yeah.
So there
Correct.
was no way that I was thinking that the game was over then. And when you talk about that, Sam Bennett, when people think that probably all 10 of his hits were dirty, people probably think that hit on Matthew Nyes behind at the end boards as well. People thought the same thing. Panthers had a guy shaken up too, where William Nylander had a shot, missed the net, and it hits Josh Mahura right in the face, bleeding all over the ice. He goes away. So the Panthers also had to deal in this one without one of their defensemen. Josh Mahura did end up coming back, but also I also want to know how many stitches he got. Hopefully not similar to Morgan Barron of the Edmonton Oilers, but just the fact that the Panthers, they were able to come out firing just like that coming into the second period. And then also, not only was Sergei Bobrovsky great, but the amount of missed opportunities that the Toronto Maple Leafs had, where we heard a ding quite a few times on the night. A lot of pucks hit the post too, but I don't want to discredit Sergei Bobrovsky on the night neither.
No, he's been the best player the last 2 games. I want to give him credit for the Boston series, but I think that was a full team effort. But clearly, right now, he is playing at a level that I don't think he's been able to play here in Florida since he's been here. I mean, I've talked about him having the stretch that he did from December or January for a couple of months to get the Panthers back into playoff contention. But right now, what we're seeing is that he's tracking everything. And what I mean by that is, did you remember the save that he made on Matthews, where Matthews just had it wide open in the slot, and Bob ends up like lunging forward with his blocker to stop it?
Leapfrog.
Like what is this, the 70s? Like what's going on here? But it's unorthodox, but it's working. And I think it's starting to get to the Leafs, to be honest with you. I mean, they pot 2 goals early, nothing after that. So they got to figure something out. And if Florida continues what they're doing effectively, it's going to be very hard for them to crawl out of the hole that they're in right now.
And then shortly after that blocker save that Sergei Bobrovsky had on Matthews, that was when part of me felt confident that the Florida Panthers were going to win this game. Was that penalty on Austin Matthews towards the end of the second period? That was what really told me that the Panthers were going to find a way to win this game. And even before all of that, even before the Mahura got hit in the face, there's a time where the Florida Panthers, it felt like that they were in the zone, in the Leafs offensive zone for like about 2-3 minutes with the Ryan O'Reilly forward group and the Luke Shen D pair there. Yep. So there was a point in that second period where they were just in the zone, getting their changes. They had a hard time clearing the puck too. And more importantly, the Panthers converting on the Leafs mistakes as they were breaking out of their zone too. And it's just the same thing over and over again of the Florida Panthers getting goals within 5 seconds of a turnover too. And that is so key.
So is that 11 now that they have? If we're keeping, track of that stat, I think it's 11 now. But I'm getting tired. I am seriously tired of the talking point that, Boston, they gave it to the Panthers. They all the turnovers, they gave the Panthers those goals in the series. I'm hearing the same thing out of Toronto and all the pundits out of, Canada right now saying, if Toronto didn't turn the puck over, I don't think this would be the same series. Like, well, what's causing those turnovers? Can we at least educate, the hockey world about what's going on? Or maybe most people know, and maybe it's just Hockey Canada right now that doesn't want to, indulge or at least go off script, we'll say, and give the Panthers any kind of acknowledgement, which, like I said, I'm tired of it. But at the same time, give me more, because I'm pretty sure the Panthers will be putting on the bulletin board every single game.
And that game-winning goal that ended up with Forsling, you can blame Mitch Marner on that, on a drop pass to Austin Matthews, and then as he got out of the blue line as well, too. And
it was reminiscent of the Los Arena goal to put the Panthers up 6-5 in the Boston game, because if you remember, they were able to keep the puck in. He gloved the puck down and he took it in and scored. This
I
one,
believe that was
he
Clifton.
ends up. That was Clifton. So he ends up passing it. Who did he pass it to? That got it over to Forsling. Was it Reinhardt or was it Lundell?
He was trying to pass it to. Are you talking about the Boston game or tonight?
Tonight.
He was trying to pass it to Matthews.
Well, no, not Marner, but Losterinen gloved it down. He ended up passing to the wing, and then the wing passes it over to Forsling.
It was a give and go to Lundell, Chucky, and then to Chucky, cross ice pass to Forsling.
Okay, so right there, you already have probably your best performing players on the ice during that turnover, and look what happens. So, I mean, all the stars are aligning right now, and if you guys can't tell from my voice, I'm excited.
We all are excited, and also the people joining us on the live stream are excited as well. We're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to talk about our 3 stars of the game and discuss more about this exciting win for the Florida Panthers as they get out of Toronto with a 2-0 series lead. We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about eBay Motors. And for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors with eBay Guaranteed Fit. You can be sure every part you need fits right first time around. Just add your ride to my garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop at eBay Motors. And with over 122 parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, May 5th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. And Nick, got to talk about our 3 stars of the game for the night. And mine are Bobrovsky, Anton Lundell, and I gotta also give one to Anthony Duclair as well. Even though there was one breakaway where his skates were a little faster than his stick handling there, I thought Anthony Duclair was great getting into the zone. I thought he was great at lifting pucks deep as well. And of course that set up to Alexander Barkov where he got the turnover in the neutral zone. I thought that Anthony Duclair had a really great game, and of course Eetu Luostarinen. He didn't get points on the Forsling goal and on the first goal by Anton Lundell, but I got to give an honorable mention to Eetu Luostarinen on the night. Thanks, Dale. So who are your 3 stars of the game, Nick?
Well, I think Bobrovsky on the case has to be number 1.
Absolutely.
By far. My second star is going to have to be Lundell as well. Not only because of the goal he scored, but the fact is that him, Reinhart, and Luostarinen was probably the most effective line tonight, and it was because they were able to keep the puck low and win almost every single battle that they had. And Lundell's not one of those guys that usually goes below the red line. So good on him for doing that. Third, let me think about this one real quick. I honestly want to who should I give it to?
I don't think there are a lot of wrong answers, Nick, honestly.
No, I know. I know I'm taking my time, but I honestly want to give it to Barkov. Not only because he finally scored a goal, but he scored a huge goal that basically what I think turned the tide of the game, and it shocked the crowd. It shocked the Leafs. But also, again, he was a son of a gun on the defensive side of things. Breaking up plays on the PK, not allowing Marner, Matthews. I'm not going to say Nylander because Nylander was sniffing around the goal the whole game, which I'm starting to get afraid of. But Barkov by far showed his full 200-foot game tonight, and I think he deserves a star for that.
Yeah, and also there's a moment in the game where if Carter Verhaeghe scored on a breakaway, there was a face-off won by Barkov. Anthony Duclair lifts it, and Carter Verhaeghe goes on a breakaway. Samsonov saves it, but that looked very similar if he scored to that Ryan Lomberg game winner in Tampa from Game 3 in 2021. Carter Verhaeghe got 4 shots on the night as well. Brandon Montour 4 shots on the night. Anton Lundell as well. So just guys consistently stepping up for the Panthers. I mean, Anton Lundell +2 as well. Mark Stahl a +2 as well on the night. And you know what? The Panthers, they weren't necessarily the best in the dot tonight. I mean, 68% to 32. So even they were controlling the play. They were getting the necessary line changes that they needed. And you know what? The takeaways and the giveaways, it doesn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story, as they were tied in takeaways but just a slight discrepancy in the giveaways category for Toronto. It was how they were consistently unable to clear pucks. And listen, you mentioned it at the very beginning with the lack of power play opportunities for the Panthers and doing this at 5-on-5 as well. And that is so key. I want to go back to over 365 days ago when it was me, you, and Jacob on a round table when the Florida Panthers beat the Washington Capitals in the first round. I asked the question, are power plays overrated? And we all said no. And it still remains a no. They on that answer. But just the fact that the Florida Panthers are able to eliminate the speed of the Toronto Maple Leafs and just consistently get sticks in lanes as well. I mean, there was also one opportunity that Carter Hagee was super patient as he was getting in between the hash marks and then going for a shot on Samsonov, which Samsonov, he had a little bit of a stinger towards the end of the game on a shot by Gus Forsling as well. So
yes, he did.
Also, that's a little bit of a alarm that's gone off, at least on my end, when it comes to preparing for Game 3. I know there's 2 days off, but also that is something to note. But man, these last 2 games, Bobrovsky being that dude, the $10 million man, but everyone else just creating plays, and more importantly, the neutral zone. That is, when you look at that part of the game, that is where the game's won and lost for the Panthers.
Yeah, and I think tonight was more of a contribution of the entire team. You had last game where Montour, took over. You had the second line, or it's dubbed the first line up in Canada, that really took lead and took over the game. This one, I feel like it was the third line that was the best, followed by the second or first line, and then followed by the Barkov line that really kind of allowed Florida to kind of just get their mojo back and start doing what they're going to do. I know the fourth line had a few chances early. I wish Colin White actually, put one in, because I know one was like kind of going across the blue paint and he just couldn't get a stick on it. But I think they're going to pop one here in the next 2 games. So it's coming.
They did in Game 6 in the Boston series.
So going back to the whole conversation of our power plays overrated. They're not overrated, but the problem is that Florida is 100 times better on 5-on-5 play. Not only does the season stats, dictate that, but also all the play that they've had in the postseason so far, saying that they've crushed teams 5-on-5. So maybe it's better for them not to actually get, power plays, but, you can't be, too comfortable with taking the amount of penalties that they have. And, with the Toronto team, having Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Riley, Tavares, O'Reilly, like all those names that could hurt you, stop playing with, fire and everything, because you're going to get burned eventually. But if Florida just sticks to what they're doing and kind of like loosens up on these stick infractions, there should be no problem going forward.
Yeah, and going back to the fourth line, when you were talking about when you were going back to Colin White, there was also an opportunity where Zach Dalpe had a great centering feed to Aaron Ekblad, and just a little bit of a lift more that Aaron Ekblad needed. I believe that was I believe that could have made it 2-2 at the time. I forget what part of the game that was, but
yeah, it would have been 2.
But man, that great setup by Zach Dalpe either way. Which unfortunately, Zach Dalpe's Charlotte Checkers are eliminated from Calder Cup contention as they lost the Hershey Bears by a final score of 6-2 in Hershey. So no Game 5 for the Charlotte Checkers, but still a great opportunity that they forced that Game 4 in Hershey on Thursday night. I was dual screening both games on the night, but we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss prepare for Game 3 on Sunday between the Florida Panthers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Third and final segment here on this Friday, May 5th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It is another edition of Fairbanks Friday. And Nick, yes, on the audio side of things, this is going to release on a Friday, but it's still May 4th, still Star Wars Day. And unfortunately, Hayden Christensen's Toronto Maple Leafs are down 0-2 in the series. So somebody I hope somebody checks up on him to see how he's doing.
All we have to do is send Mark Hamill, and everything will be fixed.
Oh
I
yeah.
think we'll be good after that.
So definitely someone has to just go check on them, and we'll see. But Nick, the Panthers, they're returning home. This fan base is hyped, my friend. I'm hyped. You're hyped. The the scenes that we're seeing from the watch parties, I believe their watch party tonight was at Funky Buddha Tap Room in Oakland Park, which is a great location to go watch a game. I've done that once, but just the when you think about the Panthers and trying to restrict tickets to Canadian addresses, and now the fact that even though they lifted it after the presale, even though they lifted it, and with the Panthers being up two nothing. How much more of a sea of red would you expect on Sunday night with how the series is right now?
Well, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, just about, what Florida was doing with their ticket sales. And while I understand that they're doing that, I really hope Panthers fans took advantage to get tickets for Sunday and also Wednesday, because usually the Leaf fans are usually about a good 60-70% when they come visit town. And Panther fans got a 24-hour, window to make that not happen. However, I'm not, ignorant to the fact that, there are a lot of Leaf fans that live here in Florida or have U.S. Addresses. So it might be a sea of blue, but I have a feeling we're going to be seeing 70% red and the other 30% blue. And it's going to feel nice. It's going to be loud. I think it's going to be a different feel than what Toronto's used to when they come down here. And it's a long time coming for fans and this franchise.
Yeah, and we were talking about pre-recording about being okay with a split in Toronto. Listen, with games 5 and a possible 7 being in Toronto, and the fact that you were able to take advantage of beating a team that has all the names that you named in the previous segment: Marner, Matthews, Tavares, O'Reilly, Nylander, and especially, and I want to go back to the third period. One very important part of that period was before the TV timeout, where the Panthers were just pinned in their own zone, and Sergei Bobrovsky was starting to get a little bit overwhelmed. And that TV timeout, as the Panthers were able to get a whistle, extremely crucial for this team in order to get everything settled down. And then once they came back, there was a big stop that Mark Stahl had to disrupt a William Nylander shot, and Bobrovsky kicked it out after. But I think that was just a big opportunity for the Panthers to just really take a stranglehold, not only in the game, but in the series. And you think about certain parts and little itty bitty plays that change series and that change mindsets as well, and confidence. And little things like that is just that one kind of stuck out to me in this game. And I just think that even if the Florida Panthers are to drop one in Sunrise, Florida, the Panthers still in a very great position. Yeah, I know Boston was up 3-1. I get that, but the Boston Bruins also did not lose 2 games on home ice in the previous series. Yeah, I know that the New Jersey Devils lost games 1 and 2 at home against the Rangers, but I think it's a little different when you have the 2 days off and you're traveling 1,000+ miles too, versus across the Hudson that the Rangers and the Devils did in their previous series. And the Maple Leafs also have time to think, and the fact that these are with the team being down 0-2 and having the time to think as well. The Panthers are starting to get in Toronto's head if they aren't there already.
I think Bob is already there. I know Bennett is 100%. Tkachuk may or may not be. I think he kind of introduced himself the first game, but then Shen, kind of gave him a good shot and, basically made him look human. But I think Toronto has to think a lot about what they want to do going forward and how they're going to be able to establish a game plan that gets around the forecheck. And, don't ask them any questions about Florida, though. I mean, if you guys want to go on Twitter and ask Ilya Samsonov what he thinks about Bob's play so far, he'll give you a very straight answer. And it to me, that shows he's frustrated and that the Panthers are already in his head. Now, shifting back to Florida, there's two major questions that I'm kind of concerned with. Number one, you come back home, you're on home ice. Panthers are usually really good, but, they didn't play that well in the Boston series. It's because you're back at home, you're more comfortable, right? You kind of get back into like a more family routine. You're, with everybody that you know. So is that going to take away from the focus or the tenacity that the Panthers are playing with right now? And secondly, Toronto beat Tampa 3 times in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's no,
in overtime.
And that's not easy at all. I mean, look at us. We're Panthers fans. I mean, we don't like the Lightning. And winning in that barn 3 times in a playoff series, I wish we could have done that even last year. But I think these teams are going to be evenly matched in the next 2 games, and it's going to come down to who's going to make the adjustments and who is really going to want it. Because, again, Toronto seems like they want it, but they're not able to finish. Florida is allowing the game to come to them, and, they dictate it from there. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top.
No doubt. And it's a perfect opportunity for the Panthers. And it's crazy. I'm just scrolling Twitter real quick. And just a quote that Jameson Olive had in relation to Paul Maurice, and talking about, he actually mentioned the Jersey Rangers series, about them being, listen to this mileage between the two arenas, 11 miles apart, and about how the Panthers being in an environment that's not theirs, and being in also practice facilities too as well, hotels, packing your bags to go to a different city, not coming back home after game 7 too, and just
focused.
It's
that's all you get.
Tunnel vision right here.
Yep.
It's just, this is the mission. This is the next team. Now they get a little bit of time to relax. Of course, there'll be a practice or 2 in between then. Probably they'll be back at practice on Saturday. But it's just they know what's ahead, and they know that, especially with Bob, with how stoic he is. Oh my goodness, could you not ask for a better goalie who not necessarily as far as performance, but mindset wise, in Sergei Bobrovsky?
For right now, yes. I really think he tries not to take things too seriously. He seems like he's a very down-to-earth kind of guy. I read an interview with him, before he signed with Florida, and he's a very intellectual individual. And what happens sometimes with those individuals is that they tend to overthink everything, and things start getting in their head. I think he honestly had to go train to unwind that type of thinking in order to be successful. Now, has Florida been able to get the fruits of that type of, unwinding thinking? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. He hasn't been the most consistent. Like, he'll be on for a couple weeks or a couple months and then completely look like he's not an NHL goalie anymore. So I am thankful right now that he is going with the team. He's with that mindset. But at the same time, is he going to be able to last? Mm-hmm. Is he going to be able to keep this going? Is he going to be the guy that we're going to ride, or are we going to see the Lion King Part 2?
That was a question that was asked even before game 2, and so far so good. That's where It's not a yes or a no. It's a so far so good. That's my answer, at least when it
That's a good answer.
And so far, 36 saves on 34 saves on the night 35 saves on 37 shots, and then 34 saves on 36 shots on Tuesday night. So gotta love what Sergei Bobrovsky is doing. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, a victorious Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. Tell everybody where they can follow you online.
Armando, thanks again for having me on, and thanks for having us on live with the fans and everything. Hopefully next time, I hope we can answer some questions or bring, some questions in light. Everybody can follow me on Twitter at Prudentia0. But let's keep going, guys. I hope next Thursday or Fairbanks Friday, we're celebrating either a win or almost a clinching series win.
Yep, and can't wait for that next episode, my friend. So thank you so much, my friend, and I will see you next time.
See you next week.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Every dayers, make sure to tune in to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast on Sunday night as myself and Joey Ganzi of the Hockey Writers will be recapping the Florida Panthers versus Toronto Maple Leafs Game 3. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.